name is Rich Krejsa, and I was in the Air Force from 1966 to 69. I spent 18 months in the Philippines and then a year in Vietnam. I was I got out of high school in 64 and went to college for a year and a half, and I never knew what I wanted to be if I ever grew up. And I was at college and I said, you know, I'm wasting my time and my folks' money. But if I drop out, I'm going to get drafted and go to Vietnam. And I'm not going to do that. So I thought about it for a while. I said, I'm smarter than the military. So I dropped out of college and enlisted in the Air Force. Yes, I got my draft notice when I was in basic training, as a matter of fact, which was interesting. But so I did that and took tests and everything, and they had a list of different jobs that I could qualify for, and I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to have a desk job, and so there was one up there that said non-Morse Intercept Operator, and I said, well, that sounds interesting. I was terrible with Morse code in the Boy Scouts, so I asked the sergeant. I said, "Does that have to do with Morse code?" And what he basically told me was, "No, it says non-Morse, you idiot." And I cleaned that up a lot. So I said, "Well, I'll do that." So after basic training, they sent me to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, to listen to Morse code and copy it on a typewriter. So that's why they say in the military, never volunteer for anything. So we did that, and then I got sent to San Angelo, Texas to learn a little bit more. There were two options for my deployment. One was to Alaska, and one was to the Philippines. And I said, "Is that mainland Alaska?" And they said, "We don't know. It's somewhere in Alaska." And I said, "Well, I'll take the Philippines." So I was there for 18 months. And while I was there, you're getting different reports from the media. We shouldn't be over in Vietnam. We should be there. And I'm going, this is, you know, I need to find out for myself. So at the end of my deployment there, they were going to send me back stateside. And I volunteered to go to Vietnam because I wanted to know for myself. That plus I would be on flying status. In the Philippines, we were just on the ground. And so went to some more training, went to survival school in Spokane, Washington, and got to Nha Trang, Vietnam in August of '68. And the first night on the base, there was a mortar attack, and I'm going, what the hell did I sign up for? You know. But being in the Air Force, we had it really good. We had barracks, okay. We had cots to sleep in every night, and what we would do was airborne radio direction finding. We flew in unarmed aircraft, C-47s, modified with electronics, so they were known as EC-47s.
Is that what that model is?
Yes. Yes,
can I
you
grab
can.
that for you
And so we would fly along. We would have a target area to fly over, and had antennas and everything. And we would pick up. We would have at least 2 radio operators on board, and one would be searching for a target, Morse code type, and we could, after a while, differentiate between Viet Cong and North Vietnamese.
Their Morse code was different?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's interesting. I learned this in the Philippines. My job in the Philippines was to copy Chinese communist radar over the Gulf of Tonkin. So you would pick up people that send Morse code, they have a different hand, I think it's called, and you can differentiate between different people. So we're flying along, and one operator would find a radio signal and lock onto it and tell the navigator. And as we were flying along, the navigator would triangulate the position, and we'd call that into the ground. And 99 times out of 100, we never knew what came of that. It was interesting. The front end crew, the pilot, co-pilot, and everything, did not have the security clearance for what we were doing in the back, so they didn't know what we were doing. You know, they would come back and see this stuff going on, but had no idea what it was.
Right.
We would with the electronics in there, once we would lock onto a signal, the navigator would then have the needle point, and he'd plot it on a map. And so as we're flying in a straight line, we got one reading here, another reading here, another reading there, and that's where the target was. We were able to tell that he was communicating in one particular mission. You know, someone's talking to someone else, and periodically you could find that other person at the same time, and so they're communicating back and forth, and we did this on one mission. I happened to be the operator there, and we found one signal, and I lock on the signal. The other radio operator is copying the code, which would also be sent to the ground or taken to the ground. And as I'm searching, I find another target that's communicating with this first target. So we locked on that one and also got that position. And the navigator said, well, that's interesting. And I said, what's that? And he said, there's a road down there going to a Green Beret camp. And they're on both sides of the road. And so I said, okay, that you know, is very interesting, and we need to call this into the ground. And we got on the radios, and we broadcast, you know, we had some information. It was coded. No response. Tried a different frequency, no response. And so I was enlisted. The front end crew was officers. I was a senior radio operator in the back. I ordered the pilot to return to base immediately. And he didn't know why. And so we're still broadcasting, trying to get a response from the ground and not hearing anything. When we landed, our truck came up immediately to meet the plane and grabbed all our information and just ran off. To this day, I still have no idea what happened.
Really?
I flew, I think it was 138 combat missions over there in that year. And I was very, very fortunate. There was one time where we found a target, found its location, called it into the ground, and the pilot was immediately ordered to get out of the area. And as we're flying away, you feel vibrations and hear boom. A B-52 came in. So we really didn't have closure. Okay, you never knew. You got this information, you passed it along, but you never knew the results. Right. But it was very, very interesting. And I was just over there for one tour. I was there August 68 to August of 69. And I got there after Tet. So I was saved from that. But the friendships you make over there, they last forever. There were a couple of guys. Tommy, he was an analyst. My job, officially titled, was Morse Intercept Operator. Unofficially, we were called ditty bops, because you hear the ditties of the Morse code and you bop the keys. So I was a ditty bop, and Tommy was an analyst. He would get the information from us and analyze it, I guess. He couldn't tell us what he did. Well, Tommy came back and lived up in Kentucky, and he was great for finding people through the internet, and people that we'd lost touch with. He would get in contact with, and he helped bring them to reunions and everything, and he helped with us. And then his tour was cut short because his father passed, and he had to go home and take care of the farm. Tommy was a great guy. Tommy Pedersen, Pedersen, married. His wife Jan and their daughters came to a couple of reunions, but Tommy, he was part of the three amigos, if you will. And then the other one was Tracy Rogers. Lived in Chico, California. He was from Ohio originally. And I understand that Aaron Rodgers' hometown is Chico, California. He spells his last name differently. But yeah, Tracy and I hit it off, and Tommy. When Tracy and I were going on R&R, we went to Sydney together. Spent a week there, and it was great. We made sure that on my 100th mission that he was on the flight with me, and I was on his flight for him. And Tracy and I were very close, and we lost touch over the years, but Tommy found him, and we started communicating again, and Tracy and his wife would come to some reunions. And it's interesting, going back to Tommy, his wife, after Tommy had passed, his wife and their two daughters came to a reunion here. And after the reunion, we said, what do you think? Well, Tommy had been married previously and gotten divorced. And I asked the girls, the ladies, how did you like the reunion? And they said they found out that their dad wasn't the SOB that they were told, you know. And like I said before, this is part of a family, the whole squadron. We had 8 different detachment or sites throughout Southeast Asia. And most of the guys I never flew with. I didn't know before, other than the reunions. And that has really been healing. It's interesting. We were on a base, like I said, we had barracks, we had bunk beds, and we go to the mess hall to eat. And I think Christmas they had a special meal. But we would get care packages from home. And I was very popular when I would get a care package. My mom and my sisters would make sure that we got stuff sent over there. And I had one cousin, she and her husband never married or never had kids. And I'm in the barracks one day and I get a call from our headquarters, from the mailroom. You've got a package here. I said, I'll be over in a little bit. They said, no, you have to come now. I said, okay. So I didn't know what was going on, so I go over there. And I go walking in the mailroom, and they said, here's your package. I go, it's got a strange odor to it. Well, I get back to the barracks, open it up. She had made rum balls, and they were in a 2-pound coffee can. I opened the top, and you could pour out the extra rum. I was very popular. I got into the service, into the Air Force, about the time Snoopy was chasing the Red Baron. My mom and my sister found a leather flying helmet, goggles, and they made a white silk scarf, sent them over there, and we would wear them periodically on these flights. And I grew a handlebar mustache while I was over there. And people said, well, they're going to be upset about this. And I was like, what are they going to do? Send me to Vietnam? You know. But we did get a new base commander in, and he said, no, we're going to run this like a stateside base and have to trim your mustache. And I said, if I have to trim it, I'm going to shave it off. So we had a shaving party. There were some adult beverages involved, and I shaved off my mustache. Also, in the barracks one day, and I get a call, the commander wants to see you, and I'm going, okay, what did I screw up? And I go over, and people are saying you probably got promoted. And I said, no, I didn't get promoted. I'm not even up for it. Oh, you got promoted. I don't think so. I said, if I got promoted, I'll fill that refrigerator with beer. So I had to use my ration card and several other people's ration cards to fill the refrigerator with beer because I got promoted. I got promoted to E5, staff sergeant. And so I was E5 in under 4 years. I know the Air Force has changed the titles for all these stripes and everything, but that's what I was. I was staff sergeant. I had 4 stripes. But talking with the guys, it's interesting. They remember things that I don't remember. But in one, I guess I mentally blocked it out, but talking with Tracy one day or texting with him, he said, do you remember the time that we got orders to grab our weapons and helmets and flak vests and everything and go to the bunkers? And I said, no. But it was talking and listening. Listening is a big part. It's very important to fellow GIs, fellow alumni at our reunions. One of them was really concerned about rumor has it the information our squadron gathered resulted in over 90% of the B-52 bombings, raids. And he was really concerned about the collateral damage, the civilians and everything. And you're flying along at 8,000 to 10,000 feet. You don't see what's going on down on the ground. I listened to other veterans, not just in my squadron, but the veterans in my Vietnam Veterans chapter that were on the ground, and sometimes they're able to talk about it a little bit and what they've gone through. And your book, reading those letters, I did not experience what he went through, but reading your book, the way his mind was working, the thoughts he had, I could relate to that. And I left. I got back from Vietnam in 1969, and it's over 50 years later, and there are things coming to mind now, feelings and thoughts that I hadn't thought about in all that time. I'm still healing. I go to see a counselor once a month. I started at the VA, and that was good, except you're with a counselor for like maybe 6 months, and you go back, and that counselor's no longer there. They've got somebody else coming in. Well, you're starting at square one. And after a while, I said, this is not for me. So I go to the Vet Center in Nashville. It's up near Opry Mills now. And I go to see Dan once a month, and we sit and talk and everything. And
is he also a veteran?
Yes, he's a veteran as well. Not Vietnam veteran, but he's a veteran.
Combat?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's helped. I mean, Cindy and I have been married for 47 years, and it got to a point where we sat down and she said, something's bothering you. You aren't talking. You aren't saying anything. And yeah, not me. And she was insistent. She said, you need to go to counseling. So I grudgingly did. And I think she'll tell you that it made a world of difference. I'm able to talk about things now that I hadn't been before, which is good. And our Vietnam Veterans chapter here in Franklin, we got our national charter in 2019, so it's only 4 years old, and I have been president the whole time. And we used to go to fundraisers, and the board started talking about that, and yeah, we accept donations, and that's good, but our main purpose is to meet people and talk to people. We've changed that from fundraisers to community engagements. And it's interesting. We sell nothing. We offer advice, thoughts, information. It's amazing how many people we will meet whose father is a Vietnam veteran, and he might still be with us or he might not. And I say, well, if he was boots on the ground, he was exposed to Agent Orange. Well, he never mentioned that. I said, but he was. And I said, studies have shown that it can be passed down 5 generations. And they go, no. I said, yes. So what's important, if he was your father, go to your family doctor. Let them know that he was exposed to Agent Orange, so the doctor can then look at you for possible symptoms of something of that. And just meeting people, they might not be veterans and might not have a veteran in a family, but it's just meeting the public, letting them know that we're here, that we want to help veterans. We've got our December meeting coming up Monday, and I'm looking back at the year, what we've accomplished and everything, and I'm going, wow. You know, I didn't realize all the things that we've done where we've been involved or anything. And you know, we help veterans wherever we can. We help organizations, we make donations to organizations that help veterans. And they might not be restricted strictly to veterans, but anything we can do to help. It's interesting. We got our charter in August of 2019, and one of the things I wanted to do, I had marched in a Veterans Day parade in downtown Nashville. I wanted us to march in a Veterans Day parade in Franklin, and talking with one of the guys, well, you going to come to the parade? No, I'm not into parades. I don't do that. I said, you need to come. No, I'm not going to do it. I said, it's an experience. So basically, I shamed him into coming. And in downtown Franklin, the starting point was at 5 Points, where the Starbucks is and the archives. And we were several blocks down from that, our group was. And we had a banner made up with our chapter information on it. And it was being carried in front of our group. We had maybe 8 or 9 people. But right in front of us was a high school band. They tend to walk faster than we do. And so the parade steps off and we're going up and we get to 5 Points. And there's a gap there. And people could see our banner. You couldn't see the front of the buildings for all the people there. But the cheers went up. People saying, welcome home, and applauding and everything. We're not even halfway down the block. And this guy pokes me and he said, I've waited 40 years for a parade. He said, this is my parade. So people coming up and saying, thank you for your service, that's nice. But some of them, a lot of them are, they just say it out of habit and it's like, oh, have a nice day. But then there's some people that you meet that you can tell they really mean it. And that's why volunteer. That's why I do these things, to keep busy. I had signed up for an honor flight out of Nashville several years ago, and I was told, well, we aren't doing Vietnam veterans. They had my application, never heard anything back. And so this gentleman I was stationed in the Philippines with, for his deployment, he had a choice of going to Vietnam or Germany. He wanted to go to Germany, so he went over there. And I found out later on that he was able to monitor what I was doing in Vietnam. And so he kept tabs that way. But they were in town one weekend for a wedding, and we got together, hadn't seen each other in years. And he lives in Asheville. And he asked if I'd been on an honor flight, and I said, no. And he said, I'm with the Rotary in Asheville. I want you to come. I want you to fill out the application. So I did. And went to Asheville after I was accepted. And they had worked out a deal with Allegiant Air. Well, Allegiant does not fly into D.C., so we had to fly into Baltimore, get on buses. There were 3 buses, and started going down to D.C. Traffic is backed up. There was an accident up ahead. The police had closed it, so the driver had to find a route, a detour around. It's starting to rain out, and our first stop was going to be at the Lincoln Memorial. And there was supposed to be a little ceremony there. So we finally get there. We're behind schedule. We start walking up and said, well, we missed the ceremony. They said, no, you didn't. The ceremony is for you guys. So on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and they had 3 wreaths set up. Then we had one World War II veteran. It was 102. We had, I want to say, 3 Korean War veterans. All the rest were Vietnam veterans. And they had a general from the space agency there. Read a speech, and then they picked out 3 people to present the wreaths, which was nice. And then the ceremony ended, and they said, well, the Korean Memorial's over here, Vietnam Wall's over here. And as we were leaving, this general shook every one of our hands, gave us a challenge coin, and thanked us. And that was nice. And I had been to the wall before several times. If I can digress here, and I will.
Absolutely.
Get me back on track. At our reunions, our squadron, we lost 17 people, 17 of our squadrons over there. And one of them, the last flight, it was shot down 8 days after the Paris Peace Accord had been signed. Our government would not acknowledge it, because if they did, that broke the treaty, because in the treaty it said we would not do any spying. Well, these guys were flying over there on a mission, keeping track of everything. So anyway, they found the crash site. And like I said, you had a minimum of 2 radio operators, and they were in the back. We were called back-enders. And at the crash site, they found the remains of the front-enders. They did not find any remains of the back-enders. There was a rumor going around that the operators had been captured and possibly taken to North Vietnam, possibly taken to China or Russia. At one of our reunions, one of the guys on that flight had 2 sisters. They were firmly believing that their brother would come back one day, that he had been captured. And so they came to one of our reunions, and they got to talk to people that knew their brother. And one of them that lives in the D.C. area, and I happened to mention to her about my upcoming honor flight, and she said, let me know when it is. Maybe I can meet you there. I let her know when I got the information. So we're at the Lincoln Memorial and get off the bus, and there she was. She met me there and was standing there during the drizzle for the ceremony in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And then when that was over, she came up and we were talking, and I said, let's go find your brother. So we went over to the wall and found his name. And she'd been there several times before. I didn't know him, but that meant a lot to me. And then we went over to Arlington, and we got to witness the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown. And that was special. I hadn't seen that before. So far on this trip, we're running behind schedule. Didn't spend as much time in D.C. as we wanted to because of the drive from Baltimore. But at least I saw two things that I hadn't seen before. We get on the bus, and we're going back to the airport, and I'm saying, this is nice, but it's not what I had expected. And I appreciate it and everything. And so we get on the plane, and it's dark out by this time. We fly back to Asheville. As we're airborne, the guy heading this up, and we had the entire plane. I was like in row 31, and there were like 32 rows. And we were assigned seats. And the guy in charge of this gets up on the intercom, and he says there were two things that we look forward to when we were deployed. One was going home. The other was mail call. And with that, the staff gets up, opens the overhead compartments. And they had big black trash bags with boxes in them. Boxes with the name and seat assignment on it. And they start handing these out. And I'm sitting there waiting, and the guy behind me and across the aisle are waiting. They're done passing them out. We don't have any. And I'm thinking, poor me. I've been disappointed before and whatever. They panicked. They tore the airplane apart looking for these. Well, then one of the staff comes walking down with a handful of envelopes. And there was a thick one there for me. And she handed it to me, and I tore it open. There were several envelopes inside of this. And my guardian, Bill, was sitting right next to me. I had a window seat. He had the middle. And I opened one and started to read it. And he said, I thought we hit turbulence. He said, you were just shaking so hard. I couldn't read it. The tears were coming down. And I said, this is what it's about. And before we landed, they came back and said, we found your box. It never left Asheville. It was still at the airport. You'll get it when you get home, when you land there. So I said, okay. And we land, and the guy says, okay, we're going off as a group. Stay in the gate area. He said, because we want the World War II vet to lead the parade and Korean War vets. Well, Asheville Terminal is like T-shaped. And our gate was one part of the T, and we couldn't see down the main entrance. And we're there, whole group standing there, congregating and everything. And they gave us our box. And I didn't have time to open it or anything. And then I heard the bagpipes. And saw that they started leading the procession. And we're standing there, and you can't see down the main aisle from where we were. And so finally our time comes up and we start to turn the corner. And all I could see were American flags. All I could see, Boy Scouts, JROTC, military men standing both sides. And the crowd, I swore that they had all of Asheville come out to greet us. And Bill's wife and my wife, Cindy, were there in the crowd. And Cindy said, I'm going with them. And Joan said the same thing. So they joined us. And marching down, and people would stop us to say, welcome home. And there was one lady there that was really in tears. And I went up to her and I said, can I give you a hug? She said, yes. She lost her husband in Vietnam. And it was late at night. And so we were going to leave the next day to drive back to Nashville, and got to the hotel and started to read these letters. And Cindy said, well, it's getting late. Finish this up tomorrow. And I said, no, I can't. I had to read them all. And we got home, and I spread them out on our dining room table. I had 60 cards and letters from family, from friends, from strangers. And it was amazing. That's why I wanted to be a guardian on an honor flight back here. And I was able to do this past September. What I didn't expect is, as our group is going over to go through TSA check-in here in Nashville, the people that were lined up there, they had a band playing, and you know, with signs and everything, adults, kids, it was just amazing. We went through TSA and get down to the gate, and they have a couple of news stations, local channel news groups there, taking pictures. They had the head of the Nashville airport gave a little speech and a welcome, and it's interesting talking about memories and keeping things hidden. This last summer, my sister and her family live down just north of Atlanta, and we go down there and everything. And it was after I had found out that I was going to be on an honor flight. And we're sitting at the table one day, and it's myself and my wife Cindy and my sister Helen. And I asked Helen, I said, did you ever hear Mom or Dad say they were proud of me? And she said, no. She said, but they never did. They never expressed anything that way. She said, but I know they were proud of you. And I said, can I ask, you how you feel about me? And she said, I didn't want to ask because I didn't know if it would trigger something. And I didn't want to do that. And she said, why didn't you say something? And I said, I thought that you didn't care. And so this year has been very big for me, you know.
In the healing process?
Pardon?
In the healing process?
Yes, yes. And I've still got a lot of healing to do, but you know, it's just being able to express, and one of the things that Cindy and Helen almost jumped across the table to strangle me was that one of them said, "You were a hero," and I said, "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." And when I got those letters and cards from the honor flight, you know, Cindy had sent out, requests from friends and family. Well, what are we supposed to write? Whatever you want to write. And I have down days. And during those down days, I can pull out these letters. And it helps. Definitely healing. The healing, it doesn't necessarily have to be veteran to veteran. Because of the classification of my job, I was told when I got out I couldn't tell even immediate family what I did for at least 10 years. And so that's all kept inside. But now, with my Vietnam Veterans chapter, talking with guys that in different branches of the service, and some are Vietnam era, some were boots on the ground, doesn't make any difference. We all experienced during that time the same thing back home. We all came home to the same thing. Personally, when we left Vietnam, we were told it was suggested strongly that we wear civilian clothes. And not understanding exactly why. But with our haircuts and the way we walked and everything, people do. And when you land back in the States and you're walking through the terminal and people start calling you names. Sometimes they throw some things at you, and I got spit on. I was called baby killer. And that just totally floored me. But then when I got home, seeing friends and relatives, they call me hero. And I'm going, here I'm called a baby killer. Here I'm called a hero. I'm neither one. I was just somebody that did a job. I had a job to do, and I did it the best I could. I don't know if it was good enough. I might never know. But that was something you never offered at that time, that you were a Vietnam veteran. If someone asked, you'd tell them. Well, what'd you do? I can't tell you, I'm sorry, And it would be dropped. Here it is over 50 years later, and some of the orders are still classified. I was living at home and up in the Chicago area, and at present-day O'Hare Field, there was a couple of sack hangars there. And I got a call one day from the commander that he had something for me. He wanted to see me. Okay, don't know what it is. I've served active duty. I don't think he's calling me back in. So I go up there, and I go into his office, and he says, well, I don't know what you did, but here it is. And he hands me a packet and a box with a medal in it. And I open up the packet, and I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. To this day, I don't know exactly what I did to earn that. There were air medals handed out. At the time, it was for every 30 combat missions.
Right.
So I have the air medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. So it wasn't for that, because there were guys that had more flights than me and that didn't get it. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the certificate I have is not accurate.
How so?
The dates on there are during my time I was over there. They had me flying out of Phuket Air Base. I was stationed in Nha Trang. A month after I left Nha Trang to come back home, that's when the detachment was moved up to Phuket. I've never been in Phuket in my life. So
they made a mistake
that's classified and everything, you know. It's one person that I failed to mention so far was Michael Stiglitz, Big Mike. He was over 6 feet tall, good, strong build. One of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet, okay? He and I served together in the Philippines. And then we flew together in Vietnam. We served together in the same detachment. Well, I had gotten there before he did, and so I rotated home, and he was still there. And he was part of the detachment that went up to Phuket. I came home in August. In October, his plane crashed and he was lost. Through our reunions and the website that we have, before one of our reunions, I got an email through the website. I'm looking for someone that might have known my Uncle Mike. And her last name wasn't Stiglitz. And so I emailed her back and said, we've got this reunion coming up in Mobile, if you'd like to come. She's up in Minnesota. She and one of her sons came down to the reunion, didn't know what to expect. They walked in the front door and I gave her a big hug. She said, that threw me off. She got to meet people and talk to guys that served with Mike. Her family didn't talk about it, didn't talk about him. They just, you know, but that was healing for her. And one of her sons, that she was born 3 years after Mike died, so she never knew him. And she has come back to a couple of reunions since then.
Nice.
So I cannot.
Was she able to get some information on Mike?
Oh yes,
okay.
yes, and it. I learned some. It turns out that two of the guys were in the ops center when Mike was out on this mission, and one of the guys was the last one to talk to him on the radio. And the plane was experiencing mechanical problems, and it was pouring rain and everything. And the plane went down, and because of the weather, they couldn't get out there for several days. And they were all saying, you know, Mike's going to make it. You know, he's going to be okay. And he wasn't. He wasn't. But when I say, you know, we lost 17 people, that's small number, but even one is too many. And I just, every time I go to the wall, I find Big Mike on the wall and say a little prayer. But with Big Mike, with Tommy and Tracy, like I said before, I'm grieving right now for those two. But I marched in the Franklin Veterans Day Parade and also the Columbia Veterans Day Parade. I marched for them. And I have them looking over my shoulder. And so I want to keep on helping veterans all I can. Ask questions. I look back now and growing up, I remember seeing old guys sitting in the corner, veterans. I never went up and asked them, never went up and said hi. And I wish now I had. I had one uncle, my Uncle Rich, he's my namesake. I never knew him. He was a tail gunner on our B-17, World War II, and he was shot down and killed. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the Air Force, was because of Uncle Rich. I had an Uncle Jim who was in the Marines in the Pacific, and we never, even when I got back, I never sat down and talked with him about his experiences. Open the door. What did you do in the service? What was your job? You know, might have been behind a desk, but, and I tell people that now, people that say, well, I wasn't on boots on the ground in Vietnam, so I shouldn't join your organization. No. Whatever you were doing at the time, no matter where you were stationed, in some way supported people that were boots on the ground. But just have a friendly conversation. Ask some questions.
Should they begin by asking them, "Are you comfortable talking about your service?"
I think they would be a great opening, because yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't, and I can't fault them. I have met some people, a couple of people, that told me that they avoided the draft. And they were hesitant to mention it to me. And I appreciated them offering that information to me. And they said, I don't want you to hate me. And I tell them, I can't hate you, because at the time, you did what you felt was right. And I'm not one to judge. I can't judge. I did what I thought was right. I mean, I could have had a stateside assignment and not gone to Vietnam. But I had to find out for myself. I had to know. And I'm glad I did. I saw things that you couldn't imagine. You can't describe. Words can't describe it. But now, the pendulum has swung the other way. The way it was when we got back, it was hate the war and hate the warrior. Now it's hate the war but love the warrior. And this sounds terrible, but there are times on the news, the local news, well, come see what the surprise was for this little girl or this little child at their school or whatever, and then their father in military uniform comes out, and I changed the channel on that. I'm not ready for that yet. I'm glad to see it. I will cheer them 100% and thank them for their service and really mean it. But I cannot watch that right now, yet, after over 50 years. I guess I was cheated out of that. And I'll never get it back. But the patriotism that I'm experiencing now is just fantastic. I hope we never lose sight of that.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with our Vietnam veterans. You guys came back, had all the reason in the world to hate the country and be spiteful and all that, and you didn't. You made sure that every soldier returning had a welcoming, you know. You made sure that every soldier internment was respectful, you know, the Rolling Thunder. You made sure that the younger soldiers who were exposed to chemicals are taken care of and covered because of what you went through and your fight, you know. So a lot of the patriotism that we feel today is 100% because of you all.
Thank you. Now we try once a month, a few of us go out to the Tennessee State Veterans Home just to visit the patients out there. And I was talking one day with a gentleman who was in World War II, And he said he went in at the end of the war in the Army, and he was over in Europe. And the first mission he was set out on, he was captured by the Germans. And he said it was just unreal. Now it was towards the end of the war, so he was able to make it back okay, but it was just, that was his experience. It's just, I cannot relate to what the current day veterans are going through with what they are experiencing because of the change in weapons and strategies and things like that. People look at us and say, well, you worked with all this ancient equipment. Well, at the time it wasn't ancient. Maybe I'm getting a little bit older, but, and we made do with what we had, and things are...
Yeah, you were avant-garde with the helicopters and...
Yeah. And flying Goonie birds.
What are Goonie birds?
That was the plane.
Oh,
it was EC-47. It was known as a Goonie bird.
Okay, actually,
this aircraft, the EC-47, I had this model built, and I had it personalized. This shows some antennas on the wings. On the top, there's some lines coming back. I don't know if you can see them or not, but those are antennas. And this was personalized. I have a photograph of myself, I'll show you, with me standing next to the tail of one of our EC-47s. And it's got the same tail number on it. And I did some research and I found some nose art for that plane, and they put that on there as well. Now these things, a lot of times we flew with the back door off and some webbing across the doorway. These...
And you're talking about back door, or you're talking about...
over on this side there was a cargo door, a back door where we would enter and leave the plane. Now the windows, you could open them up because it never flew that fast. And there was one mission that I was on, and before I go to that, the back enders, our equipment started just even with the front of the wings, and our radio equipment and everything was in the back. The navigator was back there with us, but so we would fly along, and we were in the back, and the motto for my Air Force squadron, 6994 Security Squadron, is unarmed, alone, and unafraid. Well, that's not all true. We were armed. I had a .38 revolver on my hip, and I had more bullets than Barney Fife. There were supposed to be M16s in the tail locked up. They weren't. There were no guns back there. We were on one mission, found a target. Navigator triangulated the position. He said, "That's interesting." I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's in the middle of a lake." And we looked out the window, and sure enough, there was a sampan down there. And while we were flying, we were treated to gourmet meals, sea rations. Some of them with rust on the can, some of them left over from World War II. So we're flying along, and I said to the navigator, "Could we go on a bombing run?" And he said, "Let me talk to the pilot." So we got the pilot lined up, and we're flying along, and I said to the navigator, "Tell me when." And I opened up the back window, and he said, "When?" And I threw out a can of sea rations. Missed the boat, but it was close enough to have the guy dive overboard. There were times where you had early morning flights, and you get up and get dressed and go out to the plane, you take off and fly. And other times you had afternoon flights. Well, this aircraft is sitting on the tarmac, out in the sun, in Vietnam. It got hot. So you get on board and you're wearing your flight suit and everything, and it's just dripping wet, soaking wet. And then you take off and you get up to altitude and you're freezing. But this plane could glide forever. There was one time we were flying and there was a monsoon coming in. And so to avoid it, the pilot had to go up. And we normally flew at like 10,000 feet. And we got up to 13,000 feet for a short period of time. But in the sea rations, in plastic bags, they had your condiments and things. And I happened to look down and saw this bag swelling out as we got altitude. And I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. But a good aircraft, very good, very reliable. It's a tail dragger. So basically when it's sitting on the ground, it's got the nose up in the air, resting on the rear tail, and it does landing gear on the side. But it just looked like a Goonie. These planes were used in World War II, paratroopers. They were used in the Berlin airlift. A lot of hours on them and everything, and it was just, fell in love with the bird, really did.
I bet. And how many combat missions did you fly? 130 something?
138. I didn't have time. I didn't have enough flights to get my fourth or the fifth air medal. Yeah, the Oak Leaf Cluster. But no, it was.
What were the last days like when you were a short timer? So if you had, I know they say I had 3 days and a wake up. What was like that last week?
It was a blur. I didn't want to sit around and just count the minutes, so I made sure that I was flying. And then, like I said before, there were some adult beverages involved, and I just enjoyed the company there, and well, what are you going to do when you get home? And I don't know. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, I wasn't married, and I was just anxious to get home and see my family and everything. We had housemaids in our barracks. It took me a while to get used to that because I wasn't used to showering with people in there doing laundry and women doing laundry and stuff like that. But we became friends with the housemaids and everything, and they would have their little electronic heating elements, and they'd heat up their lunch or whatever in the barracks, and some of it they open up the jar and you had to leave the barracks. It just stunk. But they were good people, and we had 2 dogs in our squadron, and one of them was named Stupid, and the other was Dixie. Now, Stupid. We had sand, of course. We were on the beach. Nha Trang is on the coast. Nha Trang is on the beach, and we would periodically walk across the beach, or the road to the sand and the beach and everything, and go swimming. And so we had sidewalks there, and we would go to the PX and buy some donuts. And bring Stupid liked donuts, and so we give Stupid a donut, and he would set it down in the middle of the sidewalk and take his nose and brush sand over the top of it like he was burying it. So no one knew that this lump of sand in the middle of the sidewalk belonged to Stupid. But there was we had a bunker there outside the barracks, and we had mortar attacks fairly often, and we would run into the bunkers because we didn't know what was going on. And one night, the mortars started to come in, and we started to go out to the bunker, and Stupid was there just barking. barking, wouldn't let us in. Found out later on that there was a Claymore mine that had been buried in there.
And he knew.
He knew. Stupid knew.
Stupid was not so stupid.
No, no. But that companionship with the dogs, with Dixie, I wanted to bring Dixie back with me, but I couldn't. And she went, and Stupid went up to Phuket with the detachment. I have to tell you, one of the reunions, and like I said, Cindy didn't know me when I was in the service. We're in a hospitality room, and I'm sitting there, and these guys come walking in, and we made eye contact. And they were guys from the Trang gang, if you will. Hadn't seen each other. It was the first time the 6 of us or 7 of us had been together in 50 years. And we started off with small talk. You know, I understand you're married, he had kids, grandkids, whatever. After 15 minutes, someone flipped a switch. And Cindy said she could see a big change. All of a sudden, we were all back 50 years ago, saying stupid things and doing stupid things that we did back then. The reunions are healing for me. These community engagements are healing for me. The honor flight, healing for me. And in some way, I see it healing for others. And I'm grateful for that. It's interesting. Cindy and I had gone to Hawaii once on vacation, and we met this couple, an American and a Vietnamese woman, his girlfriend or his wife at the time. We went out to dinner together, and we were talking back and forth, and she said, it came out that I was a Vietnam veteran. And she said, have you ever gone back? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, why not? And I said, I don't know how people are going to react. And she said, we love you.
Yep.
We love you. And if you look on the tail number, it says 161. And if you look on that model plane, it's tail number 161.
And that's not something that you put on or had them put on?
I had them put on.
Oh, you did? Okay. To make it so authentic.
Yes. And I'm sure you recognize me. Well, my glasses are different now. But other than that, I'm the same.
Absolutely the same.
Yeah.
Yep.